I'm Will Cooper. I'm a SharePoint developer. I've been doing solutions for all kinds of different SharePoint customers over the last 12 years. And I also do some other SharePoint activities. I have a YouTube channel called SharePoint Smart, and I have a site called SharePoint Dashboards. You'll hear more about that later. The tool we're going to be looking at today, this is Infowise Ultimate Forms, and this is a toolkit that you can add to SharePoint, which will greatly improve and enhance what you're able to do in your SharePoint environment. And we're all about making things easy and improving our tools. And a really great thing about our toolkit is there is no code, no programming involved. So you don't have to be a SharePoint developer in order to use our tools. We are recording this session, so this will be posted later today on YouTube, as I mentioned. Another thing is this solution I'm going to show is something you can download for free from our site. You do need to install our trial software, but this template will be available for download later today. I definitely want your input during our presentation. If you have questions or comments, the way you can get those to me is to use the Q&A session in our webinar presentation. You just click in there, type your questions. I may not be able to answer right away, but I promise I will get to you before the end of the presentation. And now we can go ahead and jump in and begin. Our tools are available both for SharePoint Online and also for on-premise SharePoint. So regardless of which version of SharePoint you're using, you can take advantage of what I'm going to show in this presentation. So this is kind of how I think of SharePoint out of the box. SharePoint's a great platform. There's lots of possibilities, and you can host all kinds of different solutions inside of it, but there are limitations. And in order to be able to build the kinds of solutions like I'm showing today, you need some extra tools. So that's where Ultimate Forms comes in. It's really easy to add our toolkit to your environment. As I mentioned, you can sign up for a free trial within a few minutes and install these tools and try them out inside of your own SharePoint after our presentation. All right, so let's get into the focus of what we want to talk about today, which is project management. And we're going to look at 10 key concepts related to that. So these are things that I see as being essential to a good project management solution. We want to have an easy interface. It should be really simple for people to understand what to do, to be able to navigate around and find what they need without needing any training or special experience to do that. So an easy interface is essential. We want to make sure we have one central dashboard. So everyone who's doing projects in your organization, they should be able to go to one place to do that. We don't want people working offline in files or doing things separately and emailing things back and forth. We want them just to go right into SharePoint and go to a central landing page. And on that page, we want to have a dashboard that's easy to understand. It gives us KPI indicators and easy to understand status. Document management is clearly going to be an important part of project management. So along with these forms that we're going to take a look at, we need an easy way to manage all the files as it relates to a project, especially as a project that may span over months where we've got multiple people involved. They need to share files back and forth and that type of thing. We're going to take advantage of SharePoint libraries, but we're going to do this in a way that's automated and simple to use. And I'll show that during the presentation. We want to have history tracking. So not only want to know a snapshot of where we are right now on a given project, we need to see the progress. You know, a project moves through different phases. We have a kickoff, we have meetings, and we have milestones that we're going through. And we need to be able to see not only where we are, but where we've been. And so that tracking is going to be really important for that purpose. Naturally, there's a lot of dialogue that happens in regard to a project. So we want a way to facilitate that in our centralized location. Naturally, people tend to send emails back and forth, but additional to that, what would be helpful is to have a discussion board where people can discuss specifics about what's going on in the project, what's coming next. They can ask questions, they can make comments, and they can do that in a fluid manner directly in our project. We're going to have tasks. That's a given when it comes to projects. So we have our project manager, and then we've got people on the team that are all contributing and making updates and doing what they need to do in the course of the project. So we need an ability to assign tasks and make sure things are getting done. We don't want anything to fall through the cracks. So task management is for sure an essential part of project management. Okay, another thing we know is going to happen for sure, we're going to have meetings related to our project. And Teams, naturally, is great to have those meetings, but not only are we going to go ahead and schedule those, we need to track that in terms of scheduling, make notes. We may want to update documents related to those meetings. And we may want to just keep a history logging when those meetings took place, send out emails, that type of thing. So that's important, thinking about all the meetings that are going to take place in context to the project. A Gantt view is really helpful when you think about projects because we've got many projects running concurrently and we want to see where we are because those overlap and we need to think about resources in terms of our team members and that type of thing. So the Gantt view is helpful. It shows you kind of a high level view to see which projects are going on, when they started over the course of the days, months, and years. Email notifications need to be included in the system. We want something automatic where when someone's assigned a task, for example, they should get a prompt to let them know that that's happened and go ahead and link them back into the system. So email notifications are going to be important for sure. Progress tracking is a big part of project management. And so we need to be able to see how far along a project is, especially, the overall percentage. And so we want to know the status. We want to know the dates as far as when the project started and when it's planned to be complete, and be able to see at a high level how far we are along on each of our projects. So those KPI indicators and tracking is important. And then as I mentioned at the start, we need to be able to have a system where you don't have to be a SharePoint developer to have all this set up. We just need something simple to load to your SharePoint with no code. All right, so let me jump to my SharePoint and we'll get right to it. Now adjust my video settings, so I gotta bring my size back down. Okay, here we go. All right, so here I am in my project management site. This is in SharePoint, and I'm gonna go ahead and jump to my project screen. We're gonna look at this first from a user perspective, and then we're gonna look at it later from, how does the setup work? How can you adjust things and configure the system so it's specific to your organization? Let me make one more adjustment. This is kind of, okay, I think that's fine. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to do a new project and add that in. And let's do this. Let's do webinars planning project. And I've already got my name in there that's going to default in for me automatically. Let me zoom this for you guys a little bit. And then notice the project start fills in automatically. So ease of use is going to be an important aspect to this. I'm going to go ahead and change that project start date. We'll say that it's going to start on January 1 of this year, and it's running all the way through to, we'll say, the end of July. And then I'm started with a not started progress, but I'm going to go ahead and say I have a little bit of progress. So I'll update the status, and I want you to notice some of the things that happen as I'm navigating around in the UI. Notice I've already got some history logging. And I need to put my team members in. So I can just put in their names, and let's add somebody else. There we go. And we've got some other tabs and things like that. So that starts up the project. It actually kicks off some automation. It's going to automatically create some folders and things for me so that I don't have to do that myself. So instead of using attachments, I can actually have a folder that I can navigate to directly. So notice this project already got started. Let's kind of go to that one and see how that works. So if I click on this project documents link, it's actually going to jump me directly to folders for my project. And I can just drag and drop files directly in there. So that's going to be really handy. Whoops. There we go. All right, so let me go into this project, and this is one that's already underway and already has some activity. So we're going to take a look at that one. I've got my history logging. What I want you to notice is that there are multiple updates that can happen. Maybe I just want to make it, I'm the project manager, I want to make a note about the project. So I can say getting underway with the second phase. I can just add whatever notes I want, and then I can go in the logging. So this could be useful over time. Maybe the management wants to be able to check in and see where we are. That logging can be helpful. And it's also helpful to capture these updates to the project. It captures who's making the updates and a date timestamp for that. So maybe if I'm switching this to hold status, I want to log that. I want to know when that took place. I want that to be part of the history. I'll just go ahead and switch it back to in progress. So the status changes on the projects are important. These history notes are going to be important as well. Now, somewhat similar to that, you may want to have a discussion board where people can put their questions and notes. When do we meet next? I can add that to the discussion board. And what's useful to this is everybody's always going to see that for the project. So that's going to be really handy. And then we get to the task management. So how are we going to handle that? We're going to be able to have repeating items. So that's a really important thing that's not normally in SharePoint. I can go ahead and assign, multiple tasks to different users and just keep adding more and more items. So I can put in a new task here, send PowerPoint to team, and then I can assign it to one of my team members. Well, I'll assign it to myself. This is going to generate an email. Notice the date filled in automatically. I have it set with the default rule where it's just going to make it do a week from today, but I could have it be any date. I can override that if I want. And these tasks, of course, have a status as well. All right, so I put a note in there. Once I do that, it's going to automatically trigger an email. So in my screenshot on the presentation earlier, you saw what that might look like. And then additional to that, also we want to make a note about different meetings. So I can, set up any meetings that I need. Project check-in 2, and then I can just come in here and I've got a date time picker. So I want to schedule that for next week. I can include a meeting link if this is done through a Teams meeting, and so on. And I can attach files. Okay, so those are just going to show up in here. Now, one thing that's really handy is I can access all this information just from the dashboard. So just in the interest of saving time, I might want to just access that directly. So whether I want to go to the project documents or I want to look at the tasks, notice that's going to accordion out. So I've got a list of all the tasks on the project and I can see the status. So I can check in on these projects really easily from the main dashboard. I don't necessarily have to browse down into it. Same thing for the meetings. I can expand that out and I can see all the meetings that are scheduled for that project. Also, we've got the progress indicator. A nice feature in here is that it's easy for me to update that. I've got a slider up at the top, or I can just use this button to change that. So in this case, I just updated the progress to 60%. And it's just a nice visual way to show everybody how far along this project is. So that's a really handy part of the functionality. Now, additional to that, we have a calendar in the site. So if I want to go to the calendar, I can just click on that. And that's going to update real time according to these project start and end dates. By default, it's showing a Gantt view for that, but I can look at it in other ways as well. So right now I've got it in a year mode for that Gantt chart, but maybe I want to see it on a month-to-month basis. So right now I'm in March, it's just showing the current month. I can click this button and go through the months, and it helps me see when projects are starting and ending. And I can also click on those project titles to jump right to the project from that calendar. You also want to have personalized views. So of course there's a lot of different people working on these projects. Maybe I just want to see my own personal tasks. If I go to the My Project tasks, I can just jump right to this. So all of these tasks have been assigned to me and I can see all of those tasks irrespective of the project. I can jump directly to that. I can make edits and I can see which ones I need to get done. I can make my updates and then I can just set those complete when I've finished my task and do that without having to, climb through all the various projects. So let's talk about how this is set up in SharePoint. This is a template that you can download later today for free. And the way that this is set up is by working through our tools. Once you have that software set up on your environment, then you can browse directly into this settings screen. Zoom it out a little bit. Okay, so this is a drag and drop style form where I can just drag fields right out onto the form. Just to demonstrate that, I'll drag a field out here, and then I can do multi-column layout. So I can make this look exactly how I want very easily. And most importantly, I'm able to do this without having to do any custom code. So that's really important. And then I can also do things like adjust the styling very easily as well. And I can do that by adding style settings like this. So I have a light blue background color on this. Maybe I want that to be light green instead. I can very easily just pick a color swatch, hit save, and now my whole form looks different. So I can do things like set borders and background colors, and then I can do a tab form, and that's really handy. Normally when you're working with forms in SharePoint, they don't give you any way to do that. It's really easy with our tool. We have a tab control, and it lets me build these different form sections. So you can see that I can click through here. I can even pick icons to show in these tabs. I can add whatever I want. So the flexibility is really important. This template that I've set up, this is something that I was able to create relatively easy, but it's very extensible. With your projects, you may have to capture additional information. You may want to add additional fields, and it's going to be very easy for you to do that. You can create columns to add to the list and then just drag and drop directly into the form. So that's very handy. Now, additional to that, you're going to want to have email notifications going out. So in my case, as an example, I have an email go out whenever a new task is created. So if I go to our alerts section, I'll show you how easy it is to have that set up. Here's my email alert rule for new tasks. And I simply had to come in here and say who I wanted to go to, and then I define when I want it to happen. In this case, whenever a new task is added, I need the email to go out. And then I can come into this visual content editor and I can make adjustments. I can make adjustments to this to make the content look however I want. This edit item link is automatically going to put in a link directly to the project form, so they don't have to browse around looking for anything. And then the data in there just comes from the fields in the list. So you can see the square brackets. That's just going to drop in the name of whoever's in that field in SharePoint automatically. So these email rules are really easy to use. And this is a huge time savings compared to what I would otherwise have to do building up a whole workflow, for example, using Power Automate. There's lots of different capabilities in this toolkit. You can see all those different options on this screen. So I can define automation and different actions. In fact, I have actions with this list. It auto-generates folders for me automatically when I do new projects. So let me go to the projects list, and if I go to the actions, you'll see what I mean. Whenever a new project is created, I want to have folders automatically created for me for the purpose of loading files for the project. And I always want to have the same set of files. So the way I made that work is I set up these actions to create folders in my library. And I just simply told it, make me a folder. And I want it to be called Project Docs and then the ID of the SharePoint list record. And then within that folder, I can put subfolders. So that's exactly what I did. So within that folder, I want another folder called Meeting Notes, so on. And in that way, I was able to automatically generate the folders that you see in these libraries. So if I click on Project Docs, you can see those standard folders that I made. What's nice about this methodology is I can do batch drag and drop. This is using SharePoint library functionality. So this is a lot more fluid and easier to work with than if I was simply using SharePoint attachments. So it's definitely an improvement over that. All right, so Let me go to the Infowise site and I'll talk to you a little bit about that so you can know how to access these tools. This is available for you to try for free. When you go to the Infowise site, you can just click in here, and if you're using SharePoint Online, you can just put in your URL and you can download that and get the full software to try out for 30 days at no charge. And once you've done that, that will allow you to download the template that I'm showing today. Once you have the software, you'll be able to go into this design screen, and what you'll do is click on the solution catalog, and you can find it in the solution catalog under Infowise webinars. This will show up as the first tile later today. You can see the one from last month, that was our inspection system, but that's where you can go to access the template. Really easy to install. You just go ahead and go into a new empty SharePoint site, and you can just click on install, and it will install everything shown into your site, and all the forms will be set up just as I'm showing in this presentation. So really easy to do that. Let me go back out to my project screen. There we are. Now, some of this other formatting comes through some special templates that come from another tool, which is a site that I run called SharePoint Dashboards. That's an additional tool that works really great, in addition to Infowise Ultimate Forms. These are templates which you can copy and paste into your SharePoint environment, and you can try out this tool. There are 21 templates that are free, which allow you to see how everything works. So if I go in here and click Get Started, you can see some examples of different templates that are here. In fact, as of right now, there are a total of 226 templates. So lots and lots of options for you to check out in the SharePoint dashboard site. So at this point, I want to go to questions and see if you guys have any questions about how these tools work and how you might use it in your environment. So I'm just calling that up right now. All right, so let me see. Okay, so there's a question about how the document structure works with the libraries, and I'll explain that. I'll kind of review that once again. So the way this works, there's an action and it's automatic. And what's happening here is I've created a special library called Project Docs, and the foldering is done automatically so that we have a consistent structure and it's easy to find things. So whenever you start a new project, it's going to automatically create a folder in that library, and in addition create subfolders. And then once it's done that, it's going to update and provide you links. So whenever somebody wants to work with documents, all they have to do is go to the project and it'll link them directly over to that. So webinars planning, that's the one I just created. So notice it automatically created a link, and I've got this folder, and you can even create your own folders in here. So it's going to be a fluid folder structure that can handle a lot of different documents. It's just using regular SharePoint document library functionality. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, there's a question about whether the calendar can filter, basically. There's a question about whether it can be according to an individual person. You certainly can set up filters on the calendars. Our calendar control is set up from the context of the project. So we have a control for that. It's under Event Calendar web part, and you go in here and provide your definition, and it can be according to specific views. So it could be where the project manager, for example, is myself, and the way I can do that is to edit the data source to get into that. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility on that. You're not limited to just one calendar view. There's all kinds of different configuration settings. You can have a filter control that would appear at the top of the calendar page, and you can look at it on the context of the status or who the project manager is or any other field in the form. Can you have a Teams notification? Yes, you can do that through automation. It's a little bit outside the scope of my presentation today, but it is possible to set up automation to have it deliver a notification through Teams. So it's certainly understood that most of us are using Teams quite a bit, especially for our web meetings, but you can also have it send notifications that way as well. Great question. Yeah, there's a question, is this going to be available for review after? Yes, we're going to load this on our YouTube channel later today, so you can, watch through the recording. You'll get a follow-up email about that, which will link you to it. Our YouTube channel is Infowise Solutions, so you can find that if you just search for it on YouTube, and this full presentation will be uploaded after we get done. So there's another question about the document management. The way that you can get to the documents is by clicking on the link. So there's a project documents link. So it's separate from the form. So it's going to work completely in the library. So there's not going to be anything additional that would happen in the form view. You're just going to click the link and it's going to jump you directly to the library. So anything you can do in a standard SharePoint library, then you can do it right here. There's nothing additional in terms of that functionality. It's just a SharePoint library with foldering. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but I'll keep the meeting open just to answer questions for you.